You're listening to the All-Star Charts podcast with JC Peretz on technicalanalysisradio.com.
Welcome back to the podcast. We're really excited. We are now in season 3 of the Technical Analysis Radio podcast. We're about 75 episodes in. Coming up on the interviews, we've got Ari Wald of Oppenheimer. I'm very excited about that. Him and I always have some interesting conversations. He was actually a guest on season 1. And we also have Tony Dwyer coming up. I'm a huge fan of his, so I'm looking forward to picking his brain. But before we get to those, we have a special treat today. I actually invited Riley the Intern, a former intern of ours and someone who I've become close with over the last couple of years. Riley Rosenberger, he's a trader. He's got a lot of aspirations. And, this being a podcast about technical analysis, we have bond guys and traders and analysts and portfolio managers and authors. And we have all these different walks of life coming on here talking about technical analysis. I thought it would be really, really interesting to sort of pick the brain of the intern. So without further ado, here's the conversation that I had with Riley the Intern.
So pretty much to start, I kind of got hooked like probably the majority of college kids out there when you see an Instagram post of some guy saying, oh yeah, I made $5,000 in 15 minutes, like sign up to figure out how. So like that kind of piqued my interest in you could potentially be doing something else and still kind of be going to school and doing other things. And obviously like you kind of figure out that those programs are in sort meaningless and worthless. And one of the programs that I was looking at too, I just flat out couldn't afford being in college and stuff. So I had to figure out other alternatives. And one thing that really kind of drew my interest is one of my buddies had How to Make Money in Stocks. And he picked it up actually at like a thrift store for 99 cents or something. And I was like asking him if I could read it. And I honestly kind of thought it was a joke to begin with. It's like one of those really clickbaity titles, like How to Make Money in Stocks. You might not assume that it's going to provide as much value as it did. And so I kind of read that the first time and didn't really think too much about it because I was more focused on making money short term because I thought I could become a millionaire overnight, and then slowly started to realize that wasn't the case, and started to kind of get connected with valuable people in the industry that have been able to show me other things.
So specifically, you're referring to the William O'Neill book, How to Make Money in Stocks, right?
Right. Yeah. Correct.
So that was your first introduction, not just into technical analysis and understanding the behavior of the markets. That was your introduction to the markets, period?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, as far as actually looking at something serious, I mean, you'd see videos about guys probably shorting some triple leveraged ETF and making a couple bucks, or some gold ETF and making some money. But as far as like actually understanding how things work and kind of looking into it more from a professional sense, that was definitely the introduction.
You grew up in Colorado, right? Where in Colorado did you grow up?
I grew up in Loveland. So really nobody in Colorado, I don't want to say nobody, but very few people move to New York or something, and let alone move to New York and go work on Wall Street. So when I kind of decided I wanted to do that, it was definitely a shock to a lot of people, and it was an unusual thing to do. So there's kind of some barriers and stuff that I had to overcome. But I ended up going to school at Arizona State, and kind of chose Arizona State off the whim because I wanted to move states and I wanted to go to a big school. But kind of had I known now, I probably would have gone somewhere a little bit closer to where the action is. But it was able to kind of give me an insight and an opportunity on what else is out there, which was good. And then kind of from that curiosity, I was able to continue further.
And then so you got pushback from friends and family? That's like a real thing?
Yeah. I think one teacher even said that I should probably think about a different career if I was looking to go work on Wall Street.
This is in high school?
Mm-hmm. Because it was kind of interesting because it was our entrepreneurship class. And so it's kind of a class promoting businesses and going and exploring kind of your creativity I mean, to me, the market's a very entrepreneurial thing. You're not necessarily selling a product or a good or something like that, but it has very similar concepts in starting a business. And so it's really interesting to hear that kind of backlash, like, hey, maybe you should think about doing something else. Like, I don't know if that's the best thing for you to go try and do. Like, oh, you might not be able to do that. Like, you don't have the pedigree, kind of stuff like that. And so it's kind of interesting pushback, but kind of ironic from the people it was coming from too.
Yeah, and I doubt that you're alone in that. So hopefully somebody out there listening, recognizes that, and it could help somebody else that's also in that situation. Because you obviously didn't really give a shit what anybody had to say, because
No.
you went out of your way to intern in New York City, right? You want to tell me a little bit about that experience?
Right. Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go intern with SMB Capital, which I know you are kind of buddies with those guys out there. And I thought that's kind of what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to go be a trader and stuff. And that was a good introductory experience into seeing how that world worked. So to kind of back it up a little bit, I joined a kind of a trading community, and I was really hesitant kind of to do so, but I was approached by a guy, and he used to go work for a prop desk in New York, and he was kind of like, hey, like, I'll be able to kind of help you out, and if this is really what you want to do, I can kind of help you out for whatever you want. And those guys kind of really gave me the opportunity in seeing what was on kind of the other side of the curtain that you didn't really learn in school, as far as how Wall Street actually kind of worked and how traders actually operate. And so it was good for me to kind of have that background with those guys prior to actually going out to SMB, because I think it gave me an advantage in the sense that I was a little bit more familiar with the environment than just kind of a total guy coming out to the desk and having no idea kind of what's going on.
So how old were you at this point when you moved to New York?
21.
You were 21. You spent the summer there?
Yeah. Yeah, so I spent the summer there. So SMB had an unpaid internship, and I ran into Mike Bellafiore actually out in Phoenix, and kind of made that connection. And from that connection, I pretty much asked him if they needed interns, and he is like, well, we do an unpaid internship, so if you find yourself in New York, like, I guess if you want to come hang out with us, you can. And I kind of took that as okay, Riley, you have an internship in New York. Like, how are we going to make it work? So I had to go caddy up in Long Island to make some money. And so I kind of found a pretty dingy place in Brooklyn to go stay for a few months, and caddied on the weekends, and then would go into the city for the weekdays and stuff. So it was a lot of fun, because I'd wanted to move to New York pretty much since high school. And so it was really cool actually kind of being able to do that.
All right, so Colorado kid in Arizona State. Now you're in New York City. Like, are you like in shock, or did you feel right at home? How was that? How'd you feel?
Well, day one when I got there, because I had to drive out there because I needed my car to go caddy. And so day one when I got out there, a buddy and I kind of walked around the city, and we like ended up in Times Square, and it was a big shock off the bat. I think the shock came primarily because I was tired from driving out from Arizona. So after I kind of got there, got to my place, kind of got settled down and stuff, and was able to go explore, I got my bearings pretty good. I just have kind of a good natural sense of direction. And so after the first few days in the city, like, it wasn't too bad of a culture shock. But it was interesting, because like, you kind of felt like you were in the center of the universe when you're out there.
You definitely felt that way, huh?
Yeah, so that was a different change than, like, you're like, oh, everything that's happening that you like hear on the news, like, this is the spot that people are talking about. Like, that's where everything's going down. So that was kind of cool to be in and around that. But as much as I wanted to move out there in high school and stuff, really, I think unless like a really good opportunity comes up, I don't know if I necessarily want to just blindly move out there again.
But how was your experience at SMB? What'd you learn there?
It was great. I think the biggest thing I learned is that I had a longer time horizon than they did, as far as the markets goes. And I don't think you can really understand exactly what time horizon suits you best until you kind of explore all of them. So they're more of a day trading firm and have a little bit shorter time frame, kind of more intraday stuff. And I guess the point that kind of got me introduced with you, JC, is in their training program and stuff that they had us go through, you were pretty much one of the only guys to talk about like weekly charts. And so I was kind of asking a few guys around the office if anybody traded a little bit longer term, and primarily most guys were trading shorter term stuff. And so I started kind of looking more into your background, which was awesome because I think the cool thing about SMB is they kind of did give us that freedom to explore like the best trading style for us. So they kind of gave us a really good foundation on this is the things you need to look at as being like a professional trader, but then they did give you the freedom to kind of explore and learn the best way you trade. So they were really awesome with like helping out with kind of reaching out to you and like understanding a little bit more about kind of the longer term swing trading environment and stuff. So I was really grateful that they didn't necessarily just be like, oh, if you don't want to intraday scalp, like get out of here. Like we don't want you to be here. So even though I didn't necessarily fit the bill or anything with exactly the way they want to trade, like I was able to learn a lot, and they were really helpful in that process too.
I think that's great advice, and I couldn't agree more. My internship was at Merrill, and I was 2003, living in New York City for the first time because I went to school in Connecticut. So I'd come to the city every now and then, but we kind of stuck up there. We were like 45 minutes outside the city, an hour maybe, and easy on train. But we stayed up there for the most part throughout the school year. So this was really my first experience living in New York City. And I really, Merrill Lynch was boring. It was a bunch of financial advisors and like their mutual funds and like playing golf with their clients. Like that's not really what I wanted to do. But
right.
I learned that, right? I wouldn't have known that that's not what I wanted to do had I not done that and been around that and really experienced that for the summer. So, my advice always to, kids that are always asking about internships and like any advice, like even if you decide that it's not for you, even if you hate it, like at least it's a learning experience that that's not for you. And if it helps point you in the right direction, then it did its job, right?
Right. Yeah, because I mean, I interned in Phoenix. I interned for a wealth advisor firm, and I absolutely hated it. I actually got kind of asked to leave that, and primarily just because they were like, we understand your interests are not aligned. And I was doing a lot of Salesforce stuff and more kind of, I guess, what's the best word for it? More administrative tasks, which one would expect to be an intern and stuff. But kind of when those tasks weren't there and I was able to kind of do other things and learn from what the other folks were doing, I was talking to them about like the money they manage and how they manage it and stuff. And they didn't even, they actually kind of used another firm in kind of conjunction to manage their assets too. So it was kind of like, well, this is definitely not what I want to do. Like, yes, you guys deal with the financial markets, but I want to be the people that you guys are also working with that are getting their hands dirty. And so, I mean, it was kind of a long process of, okay, this is what I don't want to do. This is what I don't want to do. This is what I don't want to do. Okay, this is kind of what I think I want to do. And then kind of keep poking at that until it figures out exactly what it is.
And then when you have these conversations, so you've definitely gotten more into technical analysis, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your original introduction was with O'Neill. How has that technical analysis evolved?
I think it's evolved by more understanding kind of the setups I'm looking for and understanding the potential edge. So I've been looking more at the post-earnings drift announcement theory and stuff, and kind of understanding that there is a potential edge there. Because my background, and especially when I was growing up, I would wait and look at the box scores for like the Nuggets games and stuff. And so I was always a very analytical person. So being able to use kind of technical analysis and see these trends and begin to understand, okay, these trends have an edge, and then figuring out the ways to exploit that edge from the trend. I mean, to me, it's like the only way you can control risk in the markets is by using technical analysis. And if we're looking at this from a risk analysis perspective, how are you supposed to control your risk if you're not using it?
You're preaching to the choir, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I understand why some people are like, yeah, I'm going to buy this stock. And you can buy it purely off fundamental reasons, and that's fine. But it's like, at what point are you like, I'm done. I've had enough. Because you hear in all these books all the time, and for a while it was kind of one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, they're just preaching and preaching, but like risk management and everything. And then you start to understand, like, I went back through a bunch of the trades that I made while I was in college and stuff, and I was like, the trades that I'm winning on are all doing very similar things, and the trades that I'm not winning on are just kind of where I'm taking guesses and stabs and like, oh, I think that's a trend and stuff, and not truly understanding exactly that trend and the edge I'm looking for. And so it's just way easier to identify those opportunities.
And what do the college professors these days say about technical analysis? How's that situation going?
So they kind of recognize that it's there, and that's about it. So one of our courses, we were talking about CapEx, and I think somebody kind of brought up some sort of an anomaly or something, and then she talked about momentum and how that's kind of not exactly a proponent on some of these CAP-M structures and stuff, and how it potentially could go away from that efficient market theory and stuff. And I think they just kind of recognize it, but they don't actually tell students, okay, like, yes, this occurrence happens and you can exploit it and really capitalize on this opportunity. So they kind of tell you that it's there, but they don't necessarily buy in, and they don't actually explain to you how you can capitalize off of that opportunity.
Didn't you tell me that there was like they asked if one of the stocks was down a little bit versus the other one?
So we were in class, and this is actually kind of around that same time we were talking about momentum and stuff. And I can't remember off the top of my head exactly the scenario, but one stock was like down 10% or something over the year, and the other stock was up 30%. And everybody in the class was saying, hold on to the stock that's the loser because it'll eventually turn up, and you'll get out of it for break even. And then the other scenario was the stock that was already up is going to continue to go up. And so she asked the class before giving us kind of like how the stocks ended up doing, like, what would you do? And the class was like, oh, well, I'm going to hold on to my loser and wait for it to turn around because my models say it's right. But this one already made a bunch of money, and my models say that it's overpriced, so I'm going to sell it and maybe even invest more into the one that's underperforming. Whereas from my perspective, and obviously being able to learn from you, JC, and stuff too, it's like, no, like, this one's winning. I'm going to let it keep winning. I'm going to cut the loser, but it's nothing that I have against the loser. It's just it's not performing as well. If that same name eventually wants to turn up and make a move, then we'll reevaluate. But in current conditions, it's not the case.
The teacher thinks you're crazy or what?
No, she was like, that's pretty much the momentum, like, fundamental idea to a T. And I was like, I mean, yeah, sure, don't quote me on it too much. Like, I'm not there just yet, but everybody was like, what the heck is this kid doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so they kind of recognize that there's other world is out there so that students can explore if they want to, but they never really go any further into technical analysis other than it's there. So, I mean, when you told me I needed to go pick up McGee and stuff, I went to the library and it was right there. I don't think anyone probably checked it out in 20 years or something, because they were like, this book is down in the basement. We're going to have to go find it. Is that okay? And I was like, yeah, just text me when it's available. But it was down there, so.
But I'm impressed that they even had the Edwards and McGee book. Good for them. I remember I went to Fairfield University, and they didn't bring up, hopefully they do now, but back then they didn't tell us anything about technical analysis. I didn't even know it existed until years later. I was probably like 23, probably maybe 24, before I learned what technical analysis actually was, because there was this crazy guy in my firm that would hide under his desk, and he would like talk to his clients and like tell them about these charts. I'm like, this guy's crazy, but like I'm kind of interested in what he's talking about. That was my first
Yeah.
introduction to the technical analysis, believe it or not. So I am impressed with the Edwards and McGee situation. On that note, what are you reading these days? Anything good?
I just finished Pitbull, so that was a really good book.
Is that about a rapper?
No, Marty Schwartz kind of walks you through his evolution as a trader, pretty much starting from when he kind of made the decision to become a trader, and then all the way through the process of him actually making a lot of money as a trader and growing even further. And then I'm going back through reading for, I think, probably the second or third time, Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas. So I'm a big fan of the trading psychology perspective and understanding kind of why some of these best traders are becoming the best.
So for those listening out there that are wondering, well, where do I get started? I mean, I'm, college kid or even high school or maybe just out of school. Where do I begin? What's your advice to them?
So I mean, I kind of mentioned like the guys that used to work at a prop firm that have kind of that group chat. Their group is called Trading Experts, and especially for anybody who's a student, I would definitely reach out to them because they kind of help me develop a plan on how I want to get to where I want to go. So although they are kind of more the stock market guys and stuff, like they help on a bigger level. So they were kind of more like the first big brother that I had. So not having a big brother growing up, they were a good resource. So anybody in that kind of similar position in college who kind of needs some help but isn't really able to go make connections on Wall Street and stuff, like that's definitely a great resource I would look out to. And they're happy to help people. I mean, you don't have to pay them or anything. They'll gladly have a conversation with pretty much just about anybody. But I mean, after that, just kind of digging and diving into the books that most interest you. I mean, I think I definitely have moved more from a techno-fundamentalist approach on looking for books and stuff to looking more at trading psychology books and understanding what makes some of the best traders truly the best. And so even though my kind of first book that I picked up was How to Make Money in Stocks, and I've revisited that book a handful of times, you kind of get curious in the markets and then you figure out other areas that you like more. So I think the biggest thing is just to start, like pick up a book, whatever it is, pick it up. And if you see something interesting in the book, go Google it and see if there's another book or a YouTube video about that area. Because there's so much information at our fingertips that you just have to kind of get the curiosity and then keep it flowing.
Well, Riley, I've always been impressed by, sort of your enthusiasm towards the subject, because I think that's really the biggest thing. I mean, some people try to get into this business because they think they're going to make a lot of money. Some people get into this business because they think that's maybe what their family expects from them, all this stuff. But like,
Right.
it's very clear who in this business really is just a nerd for this stuff and like really does appreciate the behavior of the market. I mean, it's just really what it is. And we
Yeah.
can all recognize each other from a mile away, and I've always appreciated that about you. So here we are. It's
Well, thank you.
It's July 2019.
Yeah.
In 20 years, what's Riley Rosenberger going to be doing? What should we expect from Riley the intern in 20 years?
JC, that's such a tough question, because if you would have asked me that question this time last year when I was still in New York working with SMB, I honestly probably would have had an answer like trade a $25,000 account under my own name or something like that. And like that probably would have been the goal, but it changes so much and so much has changed over the last year that it's hard to kind of put a figure on it. But as we were talking actually this last weekend, I think probably learning and understanding more how some of the biggest and best traders are working, and then figuring out what I need to do to kind of get my shoulders up to theirs. So come in from an approach on learning exactly how some of these guys are trading 100 million, 200 million, even $1 billion hedge funds, and learning and understanding how they do that more. That's kind of what's gotten my interest the most right now. So I think in the next 2 or 3 years, that's going to be my main goal and objective. And in 20 years, if I end up getting on that playing field, that'd be fantastic. But you never know when your curiosity might change a little bit. So it's tough to say that, but right now I think probably figuring out more about what those big boys are doing.
I think that's very mature. Nice political answer there.
I mean, it could change all the time, you know? Who knows? Maybe somehow I'll stumble in and be able to talk with Paul Tudor Jones, and he completely changes my outlook on something, and I want to go do something else for a few years. So you never know what's going to get thrown at you, but the last 12 months have been kind of crazy hectic, and so I never want to put a cap on my upside.
You know something, Riley? We talk a lot about, you specifically are about, like, you're learning from Marty Schwartz and you're reading Jack Schwager books and Edwards and McGee and all this stuff, and you're learning from older people. But I
Yeah.
always find a lot of value in listening to some of the things that you have to say about what, perhaps a younger generation might be seeing that us older folks and even older than me are just missing. What do you think that, the people your age in your position right now are seeing and winning on that perhaps older generations are completely missing?
I mean, that's kind of a tough one because, especially if it comes to the market, like you said, I do talk and listen to a bunch of the older guys and stuff. So when it comes from the market, it's definitely the older guys. But yeah, so more like general trends. I mean, I think the biggest thing, the most exciting thing I'm seeing is more kind of independent entrepreneurship. And so, like, I know a lot of people think like these Instagram influencers are like kind of, I mean, like there's not a whole lot of substance behind it. I think that a lot of the kids, a lot of the younger kids are understanding those opportunities. And I mean, we even saw it last week at VidCon, you know? Like how many of these kids are like 14 years old just like traveling around in Anaheim, and yeah, they might not be fully understanding what environment they're in, but I don't know, like it seems like if these kids are getting this entrepreneurial bug way earlier, even though it might not be at the most impactful platform, like I think it's only going to increase that entrepreneurial spirit with the younger kids.
It's
You
really
can have a
interesting.
YouTube
Remember,
channel and make money, you know, and you're 16 years old. Like, when did that happen before? Like, these kids figured it out. So,
today's generation, it's the old lemonade stand, but they're making a lot more money than selling lemonade in the corner. But what's the difference?
scalability, you
That's
know?
exactly right. Some are dancers, some play an instrument, some just make funny
Hmm.
videos, like they do comedy sketches with their friends. Like they have the
Right.
technology to do that, and they're making a lot of money from it. It really is fascinating to watch. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more with you.
And there's so many groups. And I think a lot of the times we kind of forget that humans are so dynamic. So, like, yeah, you're a huge stock market nerd, JC, but you also, like everybody knows, you're a big wine nerd. So it's like, yeah, which group are you going to put JC in? You can't necessarily put JC in a box because he has all these interests, and then you go find out all these other people who have all these other interests, and in turn, it actually kind of creates more interest. So it's like, I don't ever think these niche groups are going to go away. Like, if anything, they could just get even bigger and evolve into other things and stuff. So it's really kind of fun to watch and to see how it plays out.
Yeah, remember that girl with the blue hair, right? She has
Yeah,
like she's making a
700,000
fortune. She's like
subscribers.
15, 16 years old with blue hair. She
Yeah,
killed
I don't think these kids really understand yet the full impact that they kind of have. Like they're kind of the forefront of this generation, and so I don't think they fully understand what's going to be coming next. You know, because I think a lot of people just did these YouTube videos because it was fun, but some of these kids are starting to realize like, oh no, like I can go do other things. Like I think there's like this 6 or 7 year old kid who I'm not super big into crypto, but he's like a 6 or 7 year old kid and he has like a podcast about cryptocurrency. And one of my buddies out here in LA, he actually our Farbood who started Coinline, he he had Farbood on his podcast. I'm like, this kid's a legend. He's 6 or 7 years old and he's having Farbood on this podcast about this product that could change the way we think about a lot of things. And like this kid's just setting himself up in a perfect position. He might not want to go do crypto for the rest of his life, but geez, he's got a successful business and he's like 7 years old. Like you got to give
it.
it to him.
I love it. I love it, Riley. I think that's great advice for some of the adults listening out there. I I always preach, you want to listen to old people, the oldest people you can find, and you want to listen to the young people too. And, they both bring such different perspectives, really just humbles you. And I think the older you get, I think the more you need to pay attention to the youth, because they see things that we don't. And in this case, you're 100% right. These kids are killing it. Good for them. Well, listen, Riley,
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here. We have a lot of cool conversations all the time. And in this podcast, we always have, these are professionals, legends come on this podcast and talk about
I know, that's
technical
why I was
analysis.
a little surprised when you asked me if I wanted to do this. I was like, JC, you serious? But yeah, no, I'm glad we could make it work.
I think you bring a different perspective to the table, and this is Technical Analysis Radio. At the end of the day, we're just going to talk about it from different perspectives, whether you're a seasonality guy or a sentiment guy or a bond guy or, a trader. You come from the perspective of the intern, and I think a lot of people out there will appreciate that. So thank you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of college kids out there for sure. And I mean, I think the biggest thing is in college, they show you these opportunities about the markets and stuff, but there's very few people, I feel like, in the university system that actually understand how these guys are actually making money in the markets. And so I think, outlets like this are great opportunities to get interested in stuff like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'll see you down in Arizona soon.
Sounds good. See you later, JC.
All right. Later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the All-Star Charts podcast with JC Peretz on Technical Analysis Radio. To see all of the charts mentioned on today's show, please visit allstarcharts.com/podcast.